Welcome to Not Alone with Melissa Sue Methvin. Today's episode is a special one. This is a dear friend, Gina Weymiller. We lived probably 5-minute walking distance from each other in Wasilla, Alaska. We went to the same gym. We smiled to each other. We held a hand to each other. She had beautiful horses, and we invited my daughter over, who is a horse lover, to give treats to her horses. But one thing we had in common is we hid our truth. We hid the lives that we lived in our acreage in Alaska. Oftentimes, we know our neighbors, we wave at them, we smile, but we never truly check in. We hide behind the smiles, and that's why I wrote The Truth Behind the Smiles. We came to realize once my husband passed, her life unfolded as well, and the truth I would have never known that she hid so well. So she has a story that needs to be shared, which I'm so excited. She told me she was visiting in town and wanted to meet up for a coffee. I said, better yet, let's have a podcast.
Surprise.
So today I want to welcome her because I know her story could save a life and help you, guide you when you feel you're in a prison and it's so hard to see your truth and a way out. So welcome.
Thank you,
Gina.
so much. Thank you.
I'm so excited.
I am too. Thank you.
And
so
you look
much.
amazing, and thank you for saying
you.
yes.
Yes.
Because I think your story, and actually, even though I know a little bit about you, because we've checked in on each other so much through that big transition,
Yes.
you were even at my estate sale, which seems like a blur to me because that was a big estate sale.
Yeah.
That was a lot, and you were there as my neighbor, as a friend, helping me through the hardest times of my life. And truly, I always say, how do I get through it? Well, my faith, but community.
Yeah.
The community really came to save me and my family and to support us. And you were right there. But in the same time, I had no clue what you were going through at the time.
Yeah. Most people didn't. The thing about, and I know the word narcissism is thrown around so much, and I don't even like using it. I never used it in the duration of my relationship. I never really used it with friends, and I didn't actually even know what it was for a long time. And I was with somebody that was a covert or victim narcissist. I've since learned way more than I ever wanted to learn about it, and I'm by no means an expert, but I did have to learn how to survive it. It is a form of emotional abuse when you're in a relationship with a covert narcissist. I'm not even 100% sure that they're aware of what they're doing all of the time, but when I made the connection of the traits of covert narcissism with what I was feeling inside, everything kind of fell into place and made sense. And then, as a matter of my faith, I'm not in favor of divorce ever, but God didn't design us to be loved in abuse. And it took a lot for me, both with my church and with my family, and finally with my community, like you said, to be able to break free from it. It's something that is very, very slow. It's a slow boiling pot of water, and I'm not even sure. I think that the point that I recognized that something was really wrong was when, instead of waking up in the morning and being with the person that you're with and saying, what can I do for this person today? I want to, this is a person I want to lift up, but I want to be, the best part of their day. What can I do? Instead of that, I was waking up thinking, how can I not upset this person? How can I make sure that we have a good day? What can I do to not do something wrong is really
kind of walking on eggshells.
Absolutely.
Constantly in that fear state.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And also the physical traits. I know, we both went to the same gym, and I was there for about 10 years. And I know the people that we went with that were also there for that long started seeing differences in me, seeing changes. Alina especially, right? Yeah. She was very, as many clients as she has, she's so tuned into all of them. Mm-hmm. And she would say, what's going on? What's wrong? And actually when Scott passed away and we got on board with you, it was kind of cathartic for me, because I saw that process of, even though my husband was still alive, it was the death of a relationship. And what you went through was much more horrific and much more, wasn't your choice. It's still the same process of the grieving process, the sadness, the acceptance, the anger, the bargaining, the whole 5 steps.
I always say that. Yeah. I always say that divorce is just kind of the same. It's a death, right?
Yeah.
Of like a dream you thought you
Absolutely. Yeah.
live.
Yeah. And by the time I got to that point of acceptance, I still tried to encourage him to see what was happening to me. But the traits of covert narcissism, unfortunately, don't allow the covert narcissist or victim narcissist to see that. The reason that it's called victim narcissism is because they only see themselves as victims.
As victims.
Yeah.
Now, how long were you married for?
13 years.
13 years.
Yeah.
And now if you go back, did you notice any signs that was early on, that
Absolutely.
narcissism?
Yeah. It's a very slow, and there's so many resources out there nowadays. Most of them are pretty good. There's quite a few, podcasts out there and online resources to kind of recognize that. But I think for me, I saw a clip from Dr. Phil that was kind of like bullet pointing things. And all of a sudden, the last 12 years of my life made more sense of apologizing for feelings, of isolating myself. My only outside group by the time it was all over was the gym, and that was really my only group of friends. I was alienating my children just because I had to give all of the attention to the marriage to try and keep things together and keep things happy. And so I was very isolated at the end. And the other really tricky part of covert narcissism is you're the only one that sees it. The person that's in it mm-hmm. and the person that's working through it is the only one that sees it.
Yeah, you feel like nobody else can see that person.
They can't.
They can't.
It was, at the end, I think I had 2 people that said we kind of saw what was going on, on the outside.
So did you find that was what kept you from really talking to anybody else and saying, this is how I feel every day? Because you'd probably be like, well, I don't see him like that.
Well, no, he's very beloved in the community. Image is a huge thing. And so maintaining that image of being, good looking and in shape and, friendly to people. And that image is vitally important. Behind closed doors, it's a different thing.
It's a different thing.
So when it came time to start making that move, there were very few people that really understood what I was going through.
So then that kind of keeps that spiraling, which I see in so many women and men mm-hmm. as well, that it kind of spirals like, well, maybe I'm kind of crazy mm-hmm. or maybe it's not always bad. Oh, yeah. Did you find that that's kind of spiraled in your mind?
Sure.
And that's why you stayed for so long?
The self-blame because that's the whole relationship, right, is I'm angry with you and it's your fault that I'm angry with you. And so then I try to figure out, and one myth, kind of back it up a little bit, that I want to absolutely dispel is that it's not just insecure, introverted people that fall victim to this. I had been a single mother for 12 years. I was a manager since I was in my 20s.
Yeah, you're a career woman.
Very independent.
Yeah.
And so for it to happen to me was embarrassing too, of, how can I be a victim of emotional abuse? I know women that are, outwardly abused emotionally or physically. How could it happen to me? And then, I look back on the signs, some of these terms are just so overused, but the love bombing, right? You're amazing, you're wonderful, and then there's a process of, from the love bombing, then there becomes this mirroring of behavior. Oh, you like horses, I like horses, let's get horses, and this connection, and then you go through like a trauma bonding where there's an incident that bonds you to that person. And in my case, it was a accusation because I had been divorced from my ex-husband for 12 years, my kids' father, and he and I were friends. We still are friends, and we had redefined that relationship so that we could raise our kids together. And the fact that we were friends did not make sense to him. And there was an accusation of an affair, and it just there was no way out of that accusation. You can't prove a negative, right? And so it was a very traumatic experience being accused of that. I think that was year 3 of the marriage. And it kind of went down from there.
Because you had 3 kids, and then he had 3 kids as well, right?
I was raising, we had a blended family, and I was raising those kids as well. So
now, so was there any physical abuse?
No, not at all.
Which is almost, sometimes it's so hard for people to see it as abuse, because you're like, well, I'm not getting physical abuse. So it takes a long time to see it as abuse.
Right.
And you know what? That was me too. I never saw it as abuse. I was like, well, I'm not getting, beaten, and I'm not this, but they keep you so small. And same like me, the status, the look, all the stuff. Nobody would have believed me about that with Scott either. Right.
Yeah, and I know, when he passed away, and we all kind of rallied and we're trying to help you through all of that. Some of those things started coming out, and and you and I had another mutual friend at the gym whose son shot her. I don't know if I can say that here, but it was the same thing. It was like, there's this picture perfect family.
Yes.
How does this happen? And that was a accumulation of a lot of anger in that household. And I think for us, everybody, from the outside, it's like this picture perfect family, but that's
and why do you think we did that? I mean, I don't know. I guess I can only speak for me. I guess it was just, that brain fog that you kind of get into. And I was like, well, like you said, the faith. I'm like, well, I'm married to death do us part, really, which is kind of scary, because that's what parted us at the end. But I probably should have left way before.
Yeah.
And I keep on going, was I enabling all this? And why was I at a place almost not creating these boundaries in myself, you know? But I think what happens, that's how fear keeps you captive. Think of COVID.
Yeah.
How do they keep us so captive?
Absolutely.
It's fear. And the more they put you down, and in that fear state, you're scared staying, but you're also scared leaving.
Yes.
How many times that I was kind of ready to go, but there was a few people going, oh no, you can't just leave like that.
Right.
Something could happen to you.
Right.
I had some people worry about that, And so it's a hard one, especially when you have kids. I don't know about you, but I felt I had more control staying what happens with my kids. Because, of course, the statute of my husband, he would have had 50-50 custody. So the biggest fear I find with women that I've spoken to that have been in abuse and now out of it is that, oh my gosh, they still have to be half the time. My kids have to be there, and I have no control of the abuse that's going on there. And that was a big fear of mine, because I knew what state he was in on all the drug abuse, the alcohol. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't trust. That gave me anxiety.
Right. Yeah. So there was something that I read, early on that was called the FOG: fear, obligation, and guilt. And those are 3 communication techniques that they use to keep you, to control you. The whole thing's about control, right? Because if they can control you, you can't leave. And the fear, obligation, and guilt was a huge thing. And for me, I did feel a lot of responsibility to my stepkids. I still do. And of course, my kids. My kids and my stepkids were all pretty close in the house. They're all, I mean, we get together anytime I go to Alaska, or we see them at least once a year. We all come together as a family, even though they're stepkids, because we still feel that way. They call my mom grandma, but that fear, obligation, and guilt of what's going to happen if I leave, and in my case too, I think, and probably yours too, there's a status in the community that you don't want to be the one that left this amazing man, because then here's another term that you learn is flying monkeys. Is that they go around and tell their narrative of whatever's going on. I've always been this is really the first time I've talked publicly about, this marriage in particular and this person. But the flying monkeys and the people that reach out and they say, oh, well, I hear, you were abusive, and I hear, and the projection comes back on me. So the stories that I would hear were like, that wasn't what happened at all, and the gaslighting's part of it, of course, but I think the fear, obligation, and guilt is what keeps us as strong, independent women in there. You don't want to ruin lives of children, even the abuser. You feel very responsible for the abuser, and that's part of the communication process that they get you into of, well, I have this illness, I have this addiction, I have this, problem, and if you leave me, that's never going to get better, and you promised me, it would get better. So.
Yes, because a lot of people will stay too, because they're like, well, they fear of suicide if they leave. Right. But I always tell them, well, I stayed and what happened?
Yes.
Right? So ultimately, living in that state of constant fear projected on your kids as well. I kept on going in my mind, would I want my daughter to stay in something like this too? And so that really played in my mind a lot. Right. And I knew it wasn't a good atmosphere for anybody, but it was so scary. It's like I created my own prison and I didn't know a way out. Yeah. It was really scary. And since then, after my husband passed, I was able to help some other women get out of abuse, and it's so hard, right? But they have to come to their own clarity that it is abuse. Yeah. Especially when it's mental and not so much physical with a narcissistic, and so much healing happens after. It's not just, okay, I'm out, everything's okay. No, your body's been in that fear state for so long, and your kids too. There's a lot happening physically and mentally too that they have to navigate. So can you share what process that was what got you to finally get out? So
I give a lot of credit to God, because I do think that I made some conscious choices. Okay, we'll try counseling. I will be honest, because that's one of my biggest regrets in the relationship was that I started being very dishonest with my children, with him, just to avoid any trauma, right? To avoid like times of conflict. Like my kids would want me to come over for dinner, and I would be like, oh, no, because I knew he wouldn't want that, or he wouldn't support that, or he would be, texting or whatnot while I was over there, and it was just easier to not go to dinner. And so I learned to be very manipulative in the honest sense, right? And so that wasn't, I couldn't recognize myself anymore. It's not who I am. It's not who I was. And between that, not liking who I was seeking a lot of counseling from the church. I was seeking counseling from anywhere I could get it, right? Information, what do I do? And when I finally realized that the biggest problem is that they don't know how to change. They don't change. I mean, you can Google that and find that people say, or get on the boards and, what do I do? Will he ever change? And no, he won't change. There's a really good guy out there. His name, I can't remember his name, but his channel is Mental Healness, and he's a diagnosed narcissist, and he talks about, here's what I do, here's what they do, here's what you can and can't do about it. And he flat out says, I've been diagnosed, I work on it, it's not something we recover from. So at that point you make a choice. Is this my life, and this is what I just learned to live with, and my life continues to be around this person, and I watch my kids go off and my grandkids, or do I make a change? And so I had to make decisions, and I tell anybody that, because I do have a lot of people that seek advice out for dealing with narcissists and or breakups or whatnot. It's all about the choices that you make, right? So they've made their choice. Now I have to make my choice. I either live with it or I decide to move on. And either way, I own that choice. And I have to put my head on a pillow at night and feel good about how I conducted myself during the day. Giving myself some grace for some of the breakdowns, that's so important. I think a lot of people don't give themselves enough grace for, here's what you're going through. You may have handled it poorly. It's not the end of the world, And once I made that decision, then I really believe God shut my heart off, because literally the next day, I didn't view him the same. His physical appearance wasn't the same. I wasn't as tricked or drawn into the manipulation. And that's really, I wasn't in the house at that point. I moved into my horse trailer, was living in my horse trailer. But still going to counseling, still trying to reconcile, trying to work through things. And I think at that point, when I saw him one day and he just wasn't the same person. But I know that's a lot easier said than done. And even when I moved away out of Alaska, it was still, I was still kept that hope of maybe things are going to change. Maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll see things the way that I see them.
I feel we spiral through that. Is it because it's not always bad, right? They're not always bad.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, he's good sometimes. So maybe he'll be like that all the time.
It's called just enough. So they give you
Okay.
just enough to keep you going. And that's part of the love bombing. And when you feel that love, it's so amazing. And this person that you think is a wonderful person gives you and makes you feel like a wonderful, wonderful person. And so you hang on to that. And then you do everything you can to get back to that. And so when there's a fall from the pedestal, is what I call it, because I remember the point in time where it was like, he had me on this pedestal. And when I came off that pedestal, I spent the next 12 years trying to get back on it, and working really, really hard to make him see me the way he did in the beginning. And there was just enough of that. We'd go on vacations or we'd go to dinner, or there was just enough of that to keep me going. And it's an addiction.
Yeah.
You keep chasing that.
And I think a lot of people, they fear leaving as well, like financially, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of the control sometimes is to remove some of the finances, right?
Yes.
And I know that was a game that Scott definitely played with me, even though I'd work. It was like, well, you're working now, so then I will take this away and all this stuff. So it just became this constant spiral. And I know a lot of women trying to leave. It's like, well, how am I going to afford, apartments? How am I going to afford a new beginning and, feeding my children? And so they kind of spiral in feeling stuck.
Yeah.
Even though I truly believe that God will always provide. We might not have all the answers when they say that, but I said, this is not the atmosphere you need for you and your family.
Right.
So God will always provide, just, the prayer and trusting and stepping into it, know,
Yeah.
and miracles do happen. I've seen it.
Absolutely. And I was very fortunate in that I've always had a really well-paying job and I could work remote. And so I was fortunate that way, but I do know that that's not common. It's not common for somebody to be able to support themselves solely by themselves after leaving. And I agree, God will provide. And if, someone's considering leaving and or should they leave, but they feel stuck because of that, the finances, there are a lot of resources out there. I am part of a nonprofit called Thrival, and we actually teach not necessarily the financial part of things, but just the independent part of things, how to be independent, where I'm from in Idaho now, how to hunt. And I've heard stories of women that decided to leave and then they went hunting literally to put food on the table, and just crawl back up from there. And
tell me about this program, because I've looked it up. You've told me a little bit about it, but it sounds like you try and build the women up because now they've been in that fog. They've been playing small, but you're trying to regain their power, right? Their resilience, their strength.
So there's several aspects to what we do. The president, Tara, she is a firearms instructor and self-defense instructor, and so we do classes for self-defense and firearm instruction. We've had camps where we bring women out. I think we had 60 or 70 women out and did all kinds of things from hunting, archery, hunting with hounds, game processing. And it was amazing because a lot of the women were experienced, but a lot of them were not. My daughter-in-law, for example, was one that had never gone hunting and never processed. She just got her second deer this year, because she learned how to do that and learned how to be self-sufficient. And it just changes. Even if you're not in that environment, it changes your feeling of, I don't have to. I want to depend on somebody, if you're in a relationship, but you don't have to. And that confidence that it gives you, that kind of healing from the years of being told you weren't good enough or that you were failing, and that was another big thing for me was I am not used to failing. I don't like to fail. So failing in a marriage and a family was not an option at that point. And so, but within the marriage, I was constantly told I was failing. You're not making me happy. You're not taking care of the kids the right way. You're not supporting me and when you should be supporting me. There was just this constant message of failure to me. And again, that was part of the control. So that's one thing we do in the organization. We use horses to do a lot of things with horses, and just we can make a whole separate podcast on horses and healing.
Therapy. I've done it once, and it's very powerful.
It is.
They can hold so much of your trauma and give so much back to you too. Yeah. Because do you ever question why you attracted a man like that? Do you ever ask yourself that? Because I know I do.
Yeah. And I think, and I go back and I look at it, and because I was single for a long time and I wasn't really actively dating even, I think that there's a myth out there that narcissists look for women that are insecure or, shy or introverted or anything like that. And it's just not the truth. And a lot of the women that I've met over the years, online or whatnot, are independent business owners, and I think that the men, I think that they just seek out somebody that is an empath. And again, a word that gets used over and over, but, us as empaths do seek to help people. Yes. We get our gratitude from helping others, from, you starting this podcast, and the things that you've done since Scott passed away is amazing.
Thank you.
And everything, I know that you've helped so many women that you don't even know about, and that's part of your empathetic personality. And I think that they seek that out. And in the first date, they figure that out when you talk about the things that you do or your children, or we're not good at hiding being empaths.
That's so very true. Yeah. So how do you work on yourself now not to attract that again? What did you have to do?
I didn't actually start dating for about 3 years after
I know, I think 2 years.
Yeah,
me too.
yeah.
I was like, I better do a lot of work so I don't attract the same.
Exactly. And, I don't think, one of my, I did go to a therapist for a while, and one thing she said was, that rings very true, is be careful that if you find yourself bored in a relationship, then it's not just because you're so used to the drama and the chaos, and so that for me was, okay, I'm going to, be sure that if I meet a nice guy, there's not that. At my age, I just turned 59, and the dating pool it's not super active out there. The men that are out there, it was hard. It was hard getting back into it. Yeah.
Even I was like, my husband passed at 42, probably about, 44. I thought, okay, put myself out there. And like you said, it's awful. I know so many people are like, oh yeah, go on these dating apps. It wasn't for me. I said, God will send me somebody.
Yeah. And that was where I was like, I'm not going to date unless God himself drops somebody on the door here.
I said the same thing.
And it ended up being a little bit different. My boyfriend had reached out to me on a dating app that I wasn't really active on either, and he called and he was like, well, let's go have dinner. And I'm like, I got mounted shooting practice, I got horses to take after, I've got work I've got to do. And he was like, well, let's go right now. It doesn't sound like you're super busy, like. So literally, I got ready for this date, and he's a very kind man, and I try to be very careful about not making him pay for the sins of others, but there are times when I'll, some of that. So we go through what's called a conditioned response. That's how when we, at the end of things, become the bad guy. It's because we've got this conditioned response to be defensive, or because we know it's coming. We know the attack is coming. So the smallest things set us off. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, look at how you're responding. You're responding like a crazy person. So I'm aware of that. And I made him very aware in the beginning that this could be a thing. I may be set off by things that you don't see coming or you don't know about. But back to your question about how do you avoid narcissists, I think just once you've learned we all have a little bit of narcissism in us, right? So everybody has a little bit of those tendencies, but the ability to flip it into emotional abuse is a unique characteristic. So I would go on dates, and I would very much pick up on the signals. I went on a date with a retired cop, and should have been a red flag. but yeah, the soaking in everything that you're saying, and in a way, and then like using it to connect with you later. It's a very subtle process, but I think I spent so long. I really spent those 3 years learning what to avoid. And I think the bigger thing for me too is having boundaries that I didn't have before. You know, when I first started dating my ex-husband, I didn't have good boundaries because I was like, this is a great guy. Why do I need boundaries? I don't need to be protected from anything. And now I do. I have some very strong boundaries that are difficult for my boyfriend, but he's getting there. But yeah, the boundaries,
kind of healing to get. He's helping you heal parts, you know,
that he didn't know were
that he didn't know,
or he didn't cause.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I think that's that. So is that what you would tell your younger self? To have more boundaries,
absolutely,
and more self-worth.
Yes,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if I had those boundaries in the beginning, and I don't know if it was about self-worth, it was more about, you know, when I would make excuses for something that wasn't good behavior or wasn't right or wasn't good for me, instead of making those excuses, recognize that, no, this is not okay. You know, it's not okay for me to come to you with a feeling and then end up apologizing for it. That's not okay. Those are things that I should have. That would
be a good lesson for anybody hearing and starting to date. And those are kind of the red flags when you know something was wrong, a behavior, but then it's turned back around on you.
Yes.
And those are red flags.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it all starts.
Yeah. Or when you try to point out something that maybe doesn't seem healthy or doesn't seem right, and it ends up you apologizing for, you know, oh, I'm sorry I pointed that out in you, you know, a behavior that doesn't seem right, you know.
Yes. Yeah, because for me, it seemed like even though I'd point out something, it never would want to see it.
Right.
You know, they'd always say, no, I'm not like this. I'm not, I'm not addicted. I'm not anything, right?
Yeah.
So they can never see it themselves.
Right.
So then you kind of spiral and like thinking you're kind of crazy or maybe you're wrong and turn back on you. So it plays tricks in your mind a lot, which is what I find. And now, how do you think it's affected your kids? Like, how are your kids doing after all this?
You know, it was interesting because when I got into therapy and we were doing a little EMDR and stuff, I found that my feelings of brokenness weren't necessarily from the failed marriages. It was from failing my children. And it was for not standing up for them or not, and allowing them to see me transform into this person that they didn't recognize. You know, my daughter, bless her heart, she called me out one day for not being honest, and she flat out said, "You're not honest about things." You know, and it had to do with something where she wanted me to go do something with her, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know," you know, and she flat out called me out. She was in college at the time. And it was the best thing that could have ever happened for our relationship and for me, because I had to take a good, honest look at myself and know that. So I've spent some time apologizing to my kids for, in fact, I was just having this conversation with my son yesterday about, you know, I'm sorry that I didn't stand up for you guys, and I'm sorry that I put you guys second in my life. You know, and it was funny because when we got together, that was one of the things I told him was, you know, I'm a single mother, and don't ever make me choose between you and my children, because you're going to lose that choice. And it wasn't true in the end. Well, towards the end, it was true finally, you know, but towards the end. So that's, I've spent a lot of time, you know, trying to make amends. I did realize that, you know, my stepchildren don't really see it as much as my children did, my biological children, but
or maybe don't allow themselves to see it, right?
Yeah, well, and they love their father, and and they have a
yeah.
great relationship, and that's you know, that's great.
That's good that you don't try and create that for them. You know,
that's I truly believe bringing children into adult problems is child abuse.
Yes,
I think that making them part of the dark and dirty is not. It's just abusive, or making them part of your relationship problems, or when the relationship ends, to use them as weapons.
Oh my goodness,
I think that's the worst.
It's devastating, actually. That's one thing Scott went through when his parents divorced. You know, I know for a fact that that's was a big part of his falling out with relationship with his mother.
Yeah.
Is because of the back talking and all that. It was so toxic.
Yeah.
So toxic to do that. And it really affected the relationship with his mother, which in turn was so hurtful for him. It was this like abandonment and not understanding and never working on that. So that's a very good advice, because keeping the kids out, it just hurts them even more. You know, they already, I find kids already, when there's divorce or death, there's this guilt and shame, like it was their fault, which happens so often. I know my children still feel like, well, maybe I should have done something differently, or I should have loved dad more, you know, and maybe a lot of divorced kids, maybe I should have been better so that my parents stay together, you know. So I think they're already going through so much, and ultimately just working on yourself and trying to create that peaceful atmosphere for them, but also there is a truth that they seek too. So then there's an understanding. I know my kids, there's a lot of things they were there, and I know they saw a lot of the traumas. So it was important for my daughter, who's such an old soul, to know the truth. She really fought me on that a lot. So that was important as well. But at the same time, for me, just like you, just doing the work and now being able to use our voice in our stories, because I know there's some people right now listening, they're in that situation and they don't know how to get out. And I always say sometimes, did you ever write a lot too throughout that process? Did you find you came into your own clarity when you were writing? I
did. A lot of it I found was kind of gibberish, and you know, and I have a problem because I'm a relatively logical-minded person, so I would start writing, and then my brain would wander of, you know, there's something else I could be doing, or let me write my grocery list instead, you know, things like that. But and I think, like, one prayer that I say every day is asking God to still my heart and still my head and still my heart. You know, I just want to be still. You know, and it obviously there's a verse in the Bible that came up today on my app about being still, and that, I think, and through meditation and breath work and all of the things that you do, that's the only way to still your mind when you're someone like me that's just constantly wanting to go. And it's very important to do that so that you can start to find that clarity, because there's a whole lot of other things you can think about and occupy your time and your mind and your body with than actually bringing yourself back into health. There's so many things, you know.
Yeah. So what did you incorporate? Like that stillness, like just
meditation, meditation, prayer, exercise. Even when I'm exercising, I'm, you know, trying to be focused on what I'm doing in exercise and not, you know, thinking about all the things I'm going to get done afterwards, you know, and just taking that time for myself, taking that time to be at peace. I'm, again, very fortunate because of the horses. I can get on a horse and go in the mountains. The mountains are always my solitude.
Yes.
I mean, and I can tell if I've been away for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I start to get a little antsy about, you know, I need to get out there. I need to get out of cell phone service and just.
Right? I noticed that so much. And that's why I took my kids out of town yesterday to be out in nature. There was nobody on this hike yesterday.
That's amazing.
And surrounded by trees. And I feel that. I went to film Riders Island a couple months ago, and it's such a sacred island. There's no noise. It's no busyness. And gosh, you know, when you're praying there, it's so clear and that clarity. And the minute I flew back home, it's like I had this anxiety in my own home, and I feel like, oh, I've got a nice home, like it is a sacred place. Oh no, I felt like I need to go hit the mountains. I need to go out in nature. Yeah. So that there's something about that, to always seek that stillness in nature with no noise, no cell phone. To really reconnect, 100%. Right? And find that stillness. And you have to share. I mean, you're pretty badass.
Thanks.
You do this like horse ski joring. Explain what you do. I mean, we're going to have to put a little video of you, what you're doing.
Some of it is just the adrenaline. And there is something for me about the adrenaline. There's some connection to the horse. I've got a couple of them that I feel very connected to anyway. But there's something about that adrenaline, and a lot of, you know, I rode horses in my marriage. My husband also rode horses at the time, and we did a lot of, you know, running and whatnot. But I never could do anything independently. You know, I couldn't go do really something on my own on the horses. And in Alaska, there really wasn't that opportunity. So when I, like literally the first winter I moved to Idaho, I had a friend that ski jored, and I told her, she was in Whitefish, I said, I'm going to come up and watch you guys. She goes, well, my husband just had knee surgery. Why don't you try it? And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. A horse I'd never met or ridden, a skier I had never met who had also never done ski jor, on a course, doing something I'd never done. And the cathartic rush of that, and just the adrenaline is a thing. That's probably one of my drugs. Although as I get older, I'm finding less and less. But it was so much fun, and I got hooked on it. And we happened to win that weekend, and we won a pretty good amount of money. And then I got hooked on it. And then I had a friend that was doing mounted shooting, which is another adrenaline sport. You're going as fast as you can on a horse, shooting balloons with 45 blanks, and and that's my summer gig, and then the ski tour is the winter gig. And I think that having that connection with the horse and that adrenaline, and they're very independent things that you're doing. Although ski tour is a team sport, so you have to be good to your skier. It's just a very cathartic thing for me to do. I think hobbies are so important no matter what they are. If it's crocheting or, running as fast as you can on a horse in the snow, or flying, whatever it is that you can do as a hobby, I think those are very important. And those are the times when I can disconnect and
yes, things that you enjoy. You love horses.
Yeah,
and now you get this thrill and, community. And I just love that video that I saw of you, and, just pure joy and excitement.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm so happy for you. And so what's in the future for you right now?
So, gosh, I keep thinking I'm going to head towards retirement, and then I keep getting busier. I just got asked to be on another board of a nonprofit called Branded Brothers, which is, again, equine therapy, but it's for military veterans, first responders, people with PTSD, and we teach them how to care for the horses, like ground up. Start with, here's the horse's hooves, how to care for them, and get that, and that equine therapy, like you said, is a real thing.
Can you explain it? I've done it, and I was just blown away.
So there's an energy, an actual, we all are energy. We're made up of energy. And there is an energy connection between a human and a horse. A horse's hearts are about 3 times bigger than ours. And they actually can sense they've done scientific studies that a horse can sense your heartbeat. And that's why they say.
Isn't it up to 35 meters, something like that?
Yeah, it's long.
More? Yeah.
And then. And some horses are, their fight or flight kicks in a little bit more. Like I've got a little Mustang that was 6 when he got rounded up, so he spent a lot of time in the wild. And you have to walk up to him intentionally with a certain energy, or he's going to go. He's going to go away from you. I have another horse that doesn't care. She's right there on top of you, no matter what. But that connection and that feeling, you can actually feel the energy from the horse and the energy that when you connect with them. It's kind of hard to explain. I have a couple of friends actually, that do body work on horses. So you go to the horse, you connect with the horse's heart with your hands.
Yes,
Did you? Yeah.
Yes, I did that. Put one hand on his heart, and what they told me, and then one on
chest.
the chest, and say, like, give one thing that you've been holding on, like one trauma or something.
Yep.
Give it to the horse. He can handle it,
right.
And then the horse will give you something from their heart, right?
Yeah, and I've always, like I said, I'm a pretty logical person, and I've always been kind of like, I don't know. It seems kind of hocus pocus, but I did take a class last summer on doing body work that is like the first step when you have a horse that has a problem, trying to figure out what it is, because they can't tell you, right? And the horse that they gave me would not stand for the farrier, wouldn't pick her feet up. She was afraid of the farrier, wouldn't have anything to do with it. By the time we got done, about 3 hours later, she was picking up all 4 feet, and but it was, so it's that. So now I'm a huge believer in that. I mean, I always knew there was a connection with horses that, that people could feel.
Yes.
But to see it actually work when you're going through the body motions of clearing, the energy. energy spots in a horse.
Yeah. Wow. How do you guys do that? Just by, kind of Reiki type, like motion?
Kind of,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's a physical contact. You're actually contacting the horse. You go through their nervous system, you go through their respiratory system, their digestive system, which is a huge part of a horse, right? So you go through all three of those things, and then you go through whole body. And the horse will tell you when something's not right. If they have ulcers, you can watch them or you can feel them flinch. And they're very sensitive animals. As much as people think that they're just giant dogs, they're very sensitive animals.
Very sensitive. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, just yesterday on our way to the hike, we had to stop and turn around off the highway because there's wild horses here, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh my! And Sophia loves horses, so we turned around, we went there, and there was a big herd of horses.
Oh, neat.
And I'm not so familiar with horses, but Sophia is so confident in front of them, but they're right there, and I'm like, well, I don't know, they're wild. I don't know how close we can get, but she just wanted to get right there and touch them. And I was like, well, I don't know, they're wild. Please don't, you know.
Yeah.
And there is something that is so healing from them, and I think you're probably working on their meridians, just like I explained. Our bodies have meridian, and there'll be blockages, and the way you can unblock them is through breath or sound healing or. So I think equine therapy should definitely be something everyone should try. I tried it on the island and the BVIs, and it was just, it was interesting for me. It was just a big horse, and he's trained for trauma. That's what the center is for people that actually veterans. That's what Brittany Turner, who has the island, she trains veterans that have had PTSD, and she helps them through their traumas and trains them. Then once they've gone through this training program, then they help her find sex traffickers like all over the world. That's her big calling from God, is sex trafficking. That's to amazing. Stop that. So she's a really interesting woman. So that's where she trains them and in their healing for PTSD. And I think that's so fantastic.
That's amazing. And it's amazing to see them work together. Some of the Mustang rescue programs, or there's an overabundance of Mustangs, right? And these are horses that have been in a herd management area, and they round them up and bring them in, and they're untouched. And part of the Branded Brothers program is taking these Mustangs in, and they have a lot of different programs like this. Like there's a prison program, and that's actually one of the ways I got my Mustang was from the trainer rescuing him from one of the BLM holdings and training him. She spent quite a bit of time with him, and then I got him because I don't know if I would like to train someday, but it's on the list.
That's fantastic. And now you have your own radio as well?
No, so my boyfriend is a radio DJ and TV person. And so he's started bringing me, he's like, well, I want to talk to, we'll be talking about something and he'll say, wait, hold that thought. I don't want to hear what you have to say until, let me get a mic. And it's just an entertainment thing.
And probably a fun outlet, for me right now, podcasting, I feel like I learn so much every time I have a guest on, and it just, for me, every time my husband died, I got into so curious as to why. Every time I go back to Wasilla and I look where I was at, where I lived, I was like, wow, how come I didn't fall too? Because I could have easily fallen as well.
Yeah.
I could have easily, I don't know how many times he'd be like, oh, drink with me, do this with me, here, have this. And I'd be like, no, I could have easily fallen. So I got really curious, why didn't I fall? And as well. And that's why I left, I think, within months after, my husband died. So many people, therapists, don't do anything. Don't do anything for at least a year.
Right.
But I knew if I stayed on that 50 acres through another dark winter, I could have fallen.
Yeah.
I could have fallen. Nobody would have known. I would have been really isolated. I had community there. Yeah. It's so easy to isolate on 50 acres. Yeah. Like we did. Yeah. Right? We lived walking distance from each other, but we had no clue what we were going through. Right. We even went to the gym together, right? So I think the message today is so important to know that you don't have to stay in that. Right. I know for me, I thought, well, okay, I'm married, the kids, and this and that, and the community, his family. I loved his family. It's like, oh, it's not just me losing him. Yeah. It's like I'm losing the family and everybody else. But in the same time, You know what made me realize what kind of state I was living in is actually when I had a health scare, and that's how I came first to Arizona, because I had to find a good surgeon here. And my mom came with me, and that week that I was here, I felt so calm. My nervous system was like, had this break from being on eggshells all the time, being so scared. I'd actually, before my husband would, on the days I'd have off, and before he'd arrive from work, I would have a dinner already, all this thing. I'd always intentionally have a glass of wine before he arrived.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I don't know what I'm going to get. And so it's just, I want to tell anybody living in that state right now, just trust that God's got you. Pray on it and doors will open. I've seen miracles of women leaving, with children and no money and not knowing. I said, let's pray together. Mm-hmm. There were miracles after miracles from where we hire a lawyer and, I put a down payment for the lawyer. But after that, the lawyer's like, I'll do it pro bono. Yeah. Those are the miracles. I could have never told this person this will happen. You'll be fine. I could have never said that, but I said, well, let's just pray on it. A lot of people too fear for their own life afterwards. Yeah. And I said, pray for protection. Pray for, if you're going I truly believe in my heart for going the right way and you have faith, God will protect, will open these doors you would never, but you got to take these doors when they open, these chances, right? And as hard as that is.
I think it's hard too for people that don't know how to pray, which is, for you and I sounds odd, but I've met a lot of people that I don't know about God. I don't know, why would I be in this situation if there was a God? And there's so much learning that comes with that, and ultimately you do have to have faith. But I think there's a lot of resources out there too to help women or men that want to learn about faith and learn how to pray. But I really think it just starts from, we meet a lot of people that are convenient morality is what I used to call it, but convenient Christians that don't really know how to pray. And there's no rocket science. It's I think people are intimidated by it, but just start a conversation. Just start talking and he'll answer.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Ask questions or ask for guidance or protection or anything. Just start talking, like you said, and I think that's so important. Now, you say there's some resources. Is there some in particular that you can guide people through to, if they're looking for more information?
It's kind of one thing that I recommend to people, like initially, is it's a production that I got involved with when they first started, called The Chosen, the series. It's a mini series, and they stick to biblical truth as much as they can. So like, my stepkids, they were struggling a little bit, and I said, I'll give you $100, just go watch this series, just see what it does. And one of my stepsons just got baptized a week ago or so, I think. So that was amazing. Any of those, there's so much out there now. There's, like if you're a logical person and looking for the science behind the Bible. I mean, it all comes down to the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. And the Bible is the truth, and the Bible is the source of truth. So there's a movie out there called The Ark in the Darkness that's amazing. Okay. And it talks about how there's science behind everything that's in the Bible, how everything comes back. So once you embrace that okay, there's this book that's true. And I think once you embrace that, then logically, you'll start following the steps. It's just like any books. It's like, the book that you wrote or any books that are out there. Once you buy into and understand that it's truth, then you start seeing things differently. Then you start, understanding things that might be going on that you don't see, and that's
just start getting curious about it.
Yeah.
There's so many resources now, like you said, books out there, people's personal stories, right? And now Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you can get curious, and the more you'll find a common thread of people that have, the divine higher power, God. I know a lot of people have a hard time accepting it because they've been maybe hurt by the church or this and that. And so I say, give that a chance. That was man that hurt you. probably, right? And in the church or something, but God wouldn't hurt you, right? God is love. Yeah. So think about that again, maybe embracing that and see what happens. I mean,
what do you have to lose?
Yes, exactly. What do you have to lose? That's what I love. I was just at a Genius Network conference for 3 days. This is top thought leaders of the world. And the speakers there, they were entrepreneurs. And you think they were there to talk about how to make more money, how to, whatever. No, you know what they talked about? They talked about faith. They talked about God, their spiritual
Everything else falls into place.
Yes, and how they had learned from their experience of the grind, work and work and work and work, and then they burned out. And how they lost everything. Or, great, they made the millions, but then they lost their wife, they lost the kids, and all the things. So they're sharing, take more time off. There was one that talked about not fill up your whole calendar, actually takes some days off.
Right.
In fact, one of them said, take a year off if you can. He's like, well, most of the people here probably can. So it was so refreshing to hear that, because I think that is, we need to come back into balance. Yeah. We've been so far off balance that we need more time with God. Yeah. We really do. Yeah. And because I know that I don't watch the news. I don't watch any of that stuff. And that will keep you in that fear state and away from God.
Absolutely. That's what it's intended for.
Yes. Yeah. So instead of maybe clicking on that Fox News channel, read the Bible. Yep. Spend time in prayer. And I think that's so important. I don't know if if there's something that I haven't asked or you want to share, is there anything that you think of that's on your heart?
I think just, my experience with the people, and predominantly women, that have reached out to me on the internet when we talk about narcissistic abuse and whatnot, is they just feel so stuck. And I have one friend that I've been working with for 3 years now, and she's still stuck. And I think just taking a step, even if you feel stuck, take a step. Take a step towards, this is a boundary that I need to have, that I can't move. And then brace yourself for the fallout or whatever may happen. Understand that, own the choice that you've made to put that boundary in place. Don't waver. I mean, make sure it's something that you cannot waver on, and then stick to it. And that doesn't mean like a deal breaker of, if you call me a name again, I'm leaving. But if you call me a name again, then we're going to have a serious conversation about what our future holds. That kind of thing. The ultimatums I'm not a fan of. So I never, I was very careful about, don't give ultimatums unless you're going to go through with it. I don't like threats. I don't think that's healthy in a relationship either. Even though I'm guilty of, throwing my hands up and then coming back around and going, okay.
I think I know 2 times I actually physically went up to my husband and said, I want a divorce. Yeah. Yeah. And then I never did.
No, and it's that's not healthy. But I think, just for people that are feeling stuck and like, well, they look at you and, you've climbed out of this deep darkness and you're becoming wildly successful and you have so many people that you're influencing and it maybe seems unattainable. For someone that's still in that darkness. I mean, would you have thought that you were going to be where you were?
No, everyone asked me, can you even think about it? I said, no. And then that's why sometimes I want to tell people, you can be me, if not more. Yeah. Just keep trusting. Yeah. I would have never, a lot of people ask, why did you pick Arizona? I don't know. God caught me here. I didn't know anybody. Yeah. But keep trusting. Yep. And that's why.
Take that step.
Yeah, take that step. That's why I'm such a believer, all the miracles that happened once I stepped into it, without fear. And I work really hard on a daily basis because I'm not kidding myself that those fears keep spiraling, but I know how to really pivot and stay so grounded in my faith and in my spiritual practice. Yeah. So then that's what's guiding me and not fear.
Yeah. And setbacks really are just how bad do you want it, you know, or maybe they're changing your course and you need to go with it. That's another huge thing.
I keep stepping in uncomfortable places, you know. I mean, I know speaking in front of a whole bunch of people was not really something I was really excited about, but that's how I'm going to reach so many more people, right? And so I just keep getting guidance. Okay, if I'm going to be doing that, I need a public speaker coach. I need to practice more, and actually having a podcast gets me to practice speaking more confidently.
Well, they say the number one cause of aging is comfort, right? So the more comfortable you get, the quicker you're going to age, the quicker your body's going to break down. So that may be another reason why I do the ski touring and the mountain shooting and the things that I do, and, you know, moving 4 tons of hay in a weekend, that kind of thing, because it's not comfortable. You know, doing this is always a risk. Speaking about something I really haven't spoken about publicly before, but
absolutely.
I'm very
honored
happy
that
to have
you are willing, because I know when I text you, she's like, let's just grab a coffee. I'm like, oh no, let's be on a podcast. And then I did ask if there was anything you didn't want to talk to. You're like, no. And I think we learned that hiding our truth didn't really benefit us, ourselves, and anyone. If we can save one person out there that was living in a similar situation and give them hope of where you're at and where I'm at, I know this could be them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
it'll
take, you know, it won't be the next day, but you keep trusting and doing the work. It'll be worth it to live a more fulfilled life.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we only get one, right?
Yes.
There's no second chances. And God didn't design us to be loved in abuse. He wants the best for us and to achieve our highest purpose. And don't always know what that is. Don't always know why things happen the way they do, but have that trust, but also put some work into it. And I mean, I know you work hard. I see it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having
anyone wants to kind of join kind of the programs that you're part of, I'll put them in the show notes, but if there's a link or a website, you can mention it to the audience.
Absolutely. Thrival is a big one, near and dear to my heart. Tara Bell is the president. She's actually my skier and ski tour as well. We're a women's team. So, I will absolutely do that. And I'm available. I a lot of times just like to chat with people randomly. I think you had said so too. You had some people from Alaska reach out. So I had no idea, but also here's my story, and to be able to help. And my first thing is never to say, leave, get a divorce, get out. That will never be my first piece of advice.
Because it has to come from them,
yes,
right? They
absolutely.
have to be kind of
you have
ready.
to own the choice and feel good about what you're doing. And like I said, put your head on a pillow at night and feel good about
And a lot of the times when they reach out, I always wonder, God, how can I play a role? And a lot of times just to listen.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're not feeling alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was so great to have you on. And if you guys like the show, if you know somebody that might be in abuse, please share this podcast to them, because that could maybe plant that seed that they need for that first step out.